Okay guys, so I'm gonna show you how to start making your explosion book. First thing we need to do is make the covers. So what you'll need is 2 of these black papers that are about 6 by 6. You will also need 2 pieces of this thicker cardstock. Also what I have for you guys already pre-cut. I have some pieces of cardboard if you'd prefer to go thicker. I have the same map board that I'm using. And I have some thinner pieces of cardboard that are kind of in between. So your choice, I don't have too many to choose from, so just pick whatever you can. And your first step is to use one cover. Instead of using my mat, I'm actually gonna use a scrap piece of paper. So something like this, like a magazine palette would be fine. Just rip off a page and you can use this for gluing so that we don't get the table all messy. And what you're first gonna do is lay your your cover down. Get a glue stick and you're just gonna glue the entire surface. Okay, once you have that, this is why we use scrap paper, because if that one gets messy, we can grab another one. You're going to put your black paper down, make sure it's nice and smooth on whatever side you want on the outside. And you're going to place this board right in the middle, just like that. Of course, you're gonna use your fingers to smooth it out just a tad bit. You can also flip it over, smooth it out so that it is nice and adhered. So next, I'm gonna replace my scrap paper underneath. Next, we need to fold up the sides. We're basically wrapping this cover like a present. So grab your glue stick again, and you are going to glue the top and bottom first. So that's one side. Here's the next. And simply fold in your paper nice and tight, using your fingers to pull that paper. So you're like wrapping the outside of your book, okay? Next is to fold in the second side. Just like that. And it should stay pretty well. Now this is the next part, and it's a little bit tricky. So with my corners, and I can tell that it's not very visible to you guys, but these are my folded sides that I've already folded in. Next, I'm gonna take all of the corners and fold them in. So this is my folded edge. I'm gonna take this corner, fold it in, so it's just above the line. So that way when I glue and I fold this whole thing down, boom, I have that nice crisp edge that I'm looking for. So I'm gonna fold the other sides down. The corners basically meet the corners of my cover. So you have something like this. And of course you need to glue those sides. And pull. So I'm gonna flip this one, pull with my fingers, and make sure that it's nice and secure. So what I'm really going for is this nice line, because once we put our pages in our explosion book, we won't be able to see like all of this hot mess. You'll only be able to see the lines that are created from the fold. So once I have one done, I want to press it on the back, make sure it's nice and secure, and then you're going to put this under something heavy. So what I'll do is I'll put my name on the inside of my cover and just place it under a book or one of the boxes I have in the back of the room. So then you're going to do the whole thing again. So again, I have my nice and clean scrap paper that I can change out no problem if it gets messy with glue. And the first thing I'm going to do is take my cover, glue it, place it on my paper nice and centered, and smooth it out. Next, I will glue these two sides, fold those in, fold my corners, fold the second sides, and move on. So once I have both of my covers nice and wrapped, remember you're gonna put your name on both of them, and then you're gonna stick them under a book to dry overnight. So these covers will go face together, and then I can place them down on the back table, put a book on them to press and dry overnight. All right, so my next step in making my explosion book is actually making the inside of the book that explodes. So I've got my covers done, they are drying. Now I need to grab 3 8x8 papers. Again, we're gonna use black papers so that when we use our chopped up non-objective artworks on top of them, they really pop. So first thing you're gonna do is fold them. And the fold is very, very tricky, so please pay attention. First fold you're going to do is fold it in half from one side to the other. And you wanna make sure these are really crisp folds, which is what's gonna make your book open and close so easily. Then you're gonna fold it again. So I've got a rectangle and I'm going to fold it into a square. Now, once I open my book back up, or my fold back up, you'll notice that it kind of looks like a little bowl, right? We don't want it to be, we want it to be folded one fold and then the next, because when you open it back up, you're gonna flip it over so that there's like a little mountain instead of the bowl. So the mountain side, you're gonna take one corner and bring it over for a diagonal fold. That's the tricky part. Then once I open this back up, I can kind of see where the explosion starts to form. So once I fold it back, hello, boom. I will have a little square once I undo it that just pops open. So I'm gonna put this one to the side and I'll show you again because I know it can be a little confusing. So with your 8x8 paper, you're going to fold it first in half. And then right away, you're gonna fold it in half again. Once you have a little square, you're gonna open him up. See the bowl shape? Flip it over so it's the mountain shape. And then take one corner and bring it to the other corner. Once you get a nice solid fold on that, you can open it up, pop it the other way, and it should fold nicely into a simple square. Hey! Okay, the next step is also a little bit tricky, but once you have your 3 papers that are folded nice and perfect, what we need to do is combine them in order to make the entire book. So I'll show that process for you now. Okay, this next part is actually gluing together our different folded papers so that they can make an entire book. So here's a little story I'm gonna have for you. Yes, it's cheesy, and yes, you'll remember it. So you wanna stand your papers up like 3 little birds. So you don't want the birds to be falling over, right? You want them to be up on their feet like this, facing you, because they're kind of like little birds with a mouth and wings. It's cute. So you will set up your 3 birds just in front of you like this. Then you're gonna pretend like you fed the middle bird. So the middle bird is actually gonna flip over because he is full. Now, you can see if I take this little bird over here and overlap him with a bird that was full and glue, you can start to see where the explosion is gonna come in. So, Then you're gonna take your little bird over on the left, make sure his wing gets caught in the middle bird as well, glue, and then you will see where the explosion comes in if I lay it flat. Okay, so again, that was complicated, and I know this black paper is hard to see. So what you will do is you will take your 3 little birds, make them all face you, like so. You feed the middle guy, he turns around, he's not hungry anymore. And what you'll do is you'll glue this side into the bird that's turned around, and then you'll do the same thing over here, glue down the square, and then you will have your book. And I'll show you that overhead. I'm gonna take my first bird with his wing, and I'm going to glue just the square where the wings are gonna overlap. Once you have that nice and covered, you're gonna take your bird facing the other way. Their wings are gonna meet. So you're gonna overlap these squares, slide until it's in the correct place, and then you can flatten it and smooth it out. Do not use a lot of glue because the glue will actually stain this paper. So if you're using like Elmer's liquid glue, the glue will like come out of the sides. That's why I advise that you use a glue stick. Yeah, we're gonna have to take turns with the glue sticks, but you'll have a better result. So then you can already start to see once I can fold this, where the explosion is gonna start forming. So now I just need to glue my other little bird, his wing, into this wing. So I will take my paper, okay, glue his wing by the square, overlap this last wing, make sure I slide it up and it gets nice and perfectly centered. Hello. And press down. So once this dries, yellow, you can see where the squash book will come from. So now that I've got my big square, and when I open it up, boom, it's gonna explode. So what we'll do with these is actually put these underneath a textbook to dry as well. So you will just put your name on one side. Make sure you're doing it on like one of these 2 sides and not in the middle, because that's where our artwork is gonna go. And you will press it under a book to dry. All right, you guys, so now that we have assembled our book, we have our inside and we have our 2 covers. Now we just need to assemble the whole thing. So what you'll need is the inside explosion part of your book. You will also need the 2 covers that were wrapped. And if you'd like, you can also use a little bit of ribbon. So first thing we're gonna do is actually put our covers onto our book. This doesn't really matter entirely too much which direction it's facing, as long as the first one is done and then the second one is done on top of it. So first thing we're gonna do is take our glue stick and we're going to glue one side of the inside. The reason why we're not gluing the cover is because if we glue too much, there might be some sticky glue residue afterwards. But this book, the inside is smaller than our cover, and we did that on purpose, so that when we flip it around and press, we're getting it nice and centered on our cover. We can flip it down and we can press to make sure the glue seals. And then almost immediately, well, you will want to press it, but almost immediately you have that firm cover on the back side. So the next thing is just to glue the second side. Remember, you always glue the inside paper first. Actually, you only glue the inside paper. And here's where it gets a little tricky. For the second side, you can go ahead and put a ribbon down first, right in the middle of your booklet, and then place your cover over that. The tricky thing with this is, and you might need a partner to help you, is that you line the two covers up, nice and perfect. And the ribbon in the middle will actually just be a way for you to tie it up to make it like cute and presentable. Otherwise, when it's just lying out, it will just probably pop open, okay? So once you have your two covers, again, you are going to want to put this probably under a book to dry for a couple minutes. But while you're doing that, you can start cutting up your non-objective artwork into these pieces, which I'll show you in the next video. All right, 8th grade, to start cutting up your non-objective work into creating your explosion book, you're gonna flip it over, and I sort of already started. I'm gonna take one of these templates that I've already pre-cut for you. It's a 3.5 by 3.5 square. And you're gonna map out on the back of your paper where you want your squares to come from. So you can kind of go back and forth between the back and looking at the front, seeing where the most interesting spots are, and then tracing the template on the back. You need 11 squares in order for us to put it into our explosion book. So you can see I've already counted out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You do have some room to wiggle around and move, but you don't have a ton of room to just do random squares everywhere. So this is why it's important that you do it in pencil, not pen like I'm doing. I'm just doing it in pen so it shows up. So I've already got my 5, 6, 7 squares. I just need a few more to make 11. So again, I just want to pick out where I think the best and most interesting areas are of my painting. Remember those, flip it over, and trace. So I can go ahead and count these out. A few of them, as you know from the book, will be cut in half to form triangles for the actual explosion part of our book. But I'll show you that process a little later. All right, so the next step after you have your 11, I'm gonna do 12 boxes just because I have the room, so I can play around with my composition when I'm completely done making my book. So 12 squares to be safe. You need a mat and an X-Acto knife. And for those of you who haven't had art before, X-Acto knives are just like really sharp blades. They work kind of like knives. There's a diagonal end and a straight end. You wanna make sure that you're cutting with the diagonal end. So I like to put my finger up here on the top of the blade. You press down and you pull. So I'll show you what that looks like with my first square. Again, you're putting it on the mat so that my table doesn't get all nice and ruined. So I press right on the line and I drag. If you don't do this very confidently, your lines might be a little wiggly. But once you have cut with the nice sharp blade, it just comes apart very easy. So I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up and cut out all of my squares from my original artwork. Okay, so now I have my 11 or 12 squares of my non-objective painting. I did want to tell you guys, if you are uncomfortable with using the X-Acto knife in the mat, you can always just cut with scissors. The important thing is that you cut right on that line that you created from the template so that everything measures nice and perfect into your book. So on to how to place these in your book. All right, so now that you have your book assembled, you've got your multiple pieces of your non-objective artwork, we're ready to start setting it up and gluing down your painted paper. So the reason why we cut 11 or 12 is so that you can have enough to fill each square. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1 for the cover, and if you saved 12, you get to put the other one on the other cover. Okay. You will be cutting 6 of these squares in half diagonally so that they fit on the diagonals that you have here on the sides. So what I would do if I were you is I would pick the most interesting ones as a square itself. And those will probably be reserved for these middle 4 sections. And you can play around with your composition. So at this point, nothing is glued down. I just want to play around and kind of see what looks best. And then I'll also need to cut 6 of mine right down the middle so that I can also play with the shapes that those are creating. Okay, so I'll show you that in time lapse, how I'm going to build my book. Remember to always glue the smaller piece. So you want to glue the smaller painted paper and place that into your book instead of gluing the book itself and placing the paper on top. So that is pretty much how you make a explosion book. Just remember when gluing, just be very careful because any stray marks will cause it to stick together. And once we have all of our pieces glued in, it's nice and beautiful. We will fold it up. Again, we will press it under a book so that it can dry overnight.